What if the subject matter found in every rap song wasn't a result of the culture, but instead the outcome of a synchronized plan designed to manufacture it? The rappers you thought were keeping the street were really just assets or vessels. The lyrics that expressed their struggles were actually coded propaganda to influence you, and the street code they pushed was just a gimmick to encourage a lifestyle, with the entire rapper archetype being designed by powerful elites to mold a generation. According to hip-hop lore, a secret meeting created the gangster rap industry as we know it today. For over a decade, insiders have dismissed this story as a myth. However, the evidence suggests this meeting is a reality, and rappers like Pooh Shiesty are clear examples of that. Today, we are exposing exactly how the elites hijacked hip-hop and used it to socially engineer an entire generation. By the end of this video, you will never see hip-hop the same again. By the 1990s, hip-hop stood at the absolute cusp of a mainstream explosion. What was initially dismissed as a passing fad or a niche segment of counterculture had transformed by the end of that decade into the most dominant genre on the planet. Rappers did not just break out of the underground bubble, they became the definitive faces of global pop culture. This massive shift was driven in part by icons like Tupac, Biggie, and Snoop Dogg, whose global hits commercialized the genre and caused the hip-hop market to balloon overnight. Suddenly, every major record label was desperate to get a rapper on their roster. But what if this sudden rise of hip-hop wasn't what it seems? What if its explosion wasn't actually due to a surge of fans who were enamored by a new culture, but instead the result of an orchestrated plan created by powerful elites to manufacture one? You have to consider the possibility that hip-hop was hijacked in its early stages specifically to socially engineer the urban youth. While this might sound unbelievable to the casual listener, this has actually been a long-standing industry myth that dates back over a decade. The origin of this narrative traces back to 2012, when an anonymous letter surfaced online claiming to be written by a high-level industry insider. This letter made specific claims that remain some of the most debated topics in music history. According to this anonymous writer, a secret meeting took place in the early 90s between high-powered record executives and elite businessmen. The writer claimed to be a direct witness as these figures revealed a coordinated plan to infiltrate hip-hop. The letter alleged that these elite businessmen instructed the executives to pivot their strategy and only sign gangster rappers to their labels. The stated goal was to create an entire generation of youth who were influenced by the gangster archetype. By making this lifestyle look cool and highly desirable, they intended to influence the young people watching from the sidelines. According to the letter, the motivation for molding people into gangsters was purely financial. These elite businessmen were reportedly heavily invested in the private prison industry. In their eyes, every potential gangster they created would directly result in more inmates and more money for their bottom line. For those who have followed this secret meeting story, you already know it has never been fully confirmed by the mainstream media. While several artists have come forward to say the claims are true, other industry figures deny the entire event and dismiss it as complete nonsense. However, a new voice recently emerged to provide what I believe is the missing piece of the puzzle. Syndicated radio host Larry Gators claims that this meeting did in fact take place, but he went a step further than the anonymous letter. Unlike the original source, Larry had no issues naming the executive who was allegedly spearheading the entire operation. Larry Gator claims that legendary music mogul Clive Davis not only hosted this secret meeting, but held it directly at his own home in Beverly Hills. Larry claims that Clive Davis was one of the primary architects behind this systemic shift in the culture.
The 1995 meeting in Beverly Hills in the home of Clive Davis, and there were rappers there from all over the country. They were invited to the home of Clive Davis along with members of the CIA, FBI, which they didn't understand why the government was there, including many directors and CEOs of the private prisons throughout the United States was at that meeting in the mansion of Clive Davis. And they were telling these rappers, you need to create songs talking about killing police, calling black women bees and hoes. You need to get more nasty so we can fill our prisons that we're building. Okay.
You know what's crazy during that time? I can recall when that gangster music came into play.
That's it.
And how I don't know if the guys rapping it really knew, but they created the atmosphere.
Yes.
But it went from, I remember guys wanting to wear like the African chains around their neck,
Yes.
dancing and the haircuts, flat tops, kid and play,
Flat top, yeah.
Kwame, to the really thugged out and
Yes.
just the gang stuff. And I can recall going into like liquor stores or different places and all they had was blue and red rags.
Right.
It was just like that stuff was on program.
Now, you might be asking how Clive Davis could have anything to do with a gangster rap meeting in the early 90s when he wasn't even known for dealing with rappers at that time. But after you see the evidence I have uncovered, you will see exactly why Clive's involvement is not only possible, but highly likely. While most people recognize Clive Davis for his work with legendary singers like Whitney Houston, he was also the hidden hand behind the commercialization of hip-hop. Clive Davis functioned as the secret benefactor behind Bad Boy Records, the engine that launched hip-hop into mainstream dominance. Most people are unaware of the full story regarding how Davis positioned Diddy and transformed him into the mogul he is today, but that history connects directly to this secret meeting. In the early 90s, Puff had been ousted from Uptown Records by Andre Harrell. While he had just signed Biggie Smalls, he found himself with no label and no capital to turn him into a star. Then, seemingly out of nowhere, Puff secured a massive deal with Arista Records, which was headed by Clive Davis at the time. Long-standing industry rumors suggest that Puff had to go to extreme lengths, doing a little extra to secure that deal with Clive. Many believe Davis is the architect who molded Puffy into the figure he became. If you want a deeper dive into that specific relationship, make sure to check out this video after this one. According to the official narrative, Puff convinced Clive that hip-hop was the next global phenomenon and that he could get Arista involved before the genre exploded. Clive was reportedly hesitant at first, yet Diddy somehow walked away with $15 million to fund the Bad Boy venture. This investment was staggering because, up to that point, Puff had not provided the track record to validate a $15 million risk. In the 90s, that amount was equivalent to nearly $38 million today. What rational investor risked that kind of capital on someone unproven? Diddy took that funding, and by the time Biggie passed away, he had become the face of a rapidly expanding hip-hop empire. This was the catalyst that changed hip-hop forever, turning it into the massive corporate industry we see today. If Clive Davis had not validated Diddy's vision, hip-hop likely would have never reached these heights. But the timing of this investment is incredibly telling. According to the anonymous letter, the secret meeting that restructured the genre happened in the early 90s. Around the same time, Clive Davis, a pop music executive, randomly decided to pivot into hip-hop, which was still a relatively new and unproven genre. It is alleged that Clive spearheaded the secret meeting at his own home, and he just so happens to invest heavily in hip-hop around the same exact moment this meeting reportedly took place. Clive invests in Bad Boy, which goes on to produce a roster of top-selling gangster rappers like Craig Mack and Biggie Smalls, artists who changed the genre's trajectory forever. Is this a mere coincidence, or is it the evidence that confirms the warning in that anonymous letter? This suggests that after that secret meeting, Clive went searching for the perfect vehicle to execute the plan. He found Puffy, and instead of signing a single artist, he acquired an entire roster. This explains why the narrative surrounding hip-hop shifted so aggressively in the 90s. When figures like Clive Davis provide the backing, the culture stops being underground and becomes a priority for the entire global industry. When you look at the events of the 1980s that paved the way for that infamous meeting in the 90s, the narrative becomes even more calculated. In the mid-80s, NWA emerged as hip-hop cultural icons after releasing a series of aggressive, groundbreaking hits. While tracks like Panic Zone and Boys in the Hood earned them local notoriety, the moment they dropped straight out of Compton, they were catapulted into global superstardom. This was a definitive moment that redesigned the genre and set the stage for what hip-hop would forever become. However, when you examine NWA's instant rise to fame, alongside their lack of actual street cred, they appear to be studio gangsters at best, or industry plants at worst. As most of you already know, it has been confirmed by many industry veterans that the core members of NWA were not the hardened criminals depicted in their lyrics. While it is widely accepted that Eazy-E had legitimate street ties, figures like Dr. Dre, Ice Cube, and DJ Yella were far from being gangsters. Yet, they were the individuals who made the gangster rap aesthetic a global phenomenon. How they achieved that level of influence is where the story becomes truly strange. Not long after forming, the group was signed by a record label named Priority Records. While Priority eventually became a dominant force in West Coast gangster rap, they were not distributing hip-hop of any kind before signing NWA. The three founders were actually former executives at KTEL International, a company famous for its As Seen on TV music compilations. The label's first massive commercial win was not rap, but a novelty soul project. They licensed the rights to the California Raisins animated characters from television commercials and released an album of soul oldies. Then, seemingly out of nowhere, these same executives decided to invest millions of dollars into a genre of music that hadn't even been fully defined yet. This massive pivot from animated raisins to the world's most dangerous group should tell you everything you need to know. I believe NWA served as the true beginning of this social experiment. This was the moment the elites infiltrated hip-hop and began to reconstruct its foundation. Evidence suggests that Priority Records instructed these artists to project a specific gangster image to the public. They had songwriters guiding their lyrics and industry handlers molding their public personas to fit a dangerous archetype. I'm not making these claims without basis. Ice Cube himself has stated that he felt he was used to push a specific gangster rap agenda.
Let's take rap music.
Let's take it.
Same people who own the prisons. It's not about making somebody write the lyrics. It's about being there as guardrails to ensure certain songs make it through and certain songs don't. Some records are made by committee, meaning record committee guys sit around and tell the artists, this is hot, say that, do this. We're going to have this guy write the lyrics. We're going to have that. So the narrative is really kind of, structured and really made into what the record company want the record to be, and what a lot of artists are frustrated with this kind of music making. A lot of people, feel like they're being controlled by the label, how they do it, telling you what songs to sing, what hooks to do, what songs, you can do your song, all right, that's an album cut. But the single is what we all say is the single. Oh, you have, the record company pushing the narrative. This to me is somewhat, some social engineering going on here to make sure those prisons stay full. Now, there's a lot of to connect to make that happen. I'm just giving you a broad example of how people at the top can manipulate what's going on with the people who are bickering and fighting.
By the time the 90s arrived, the blueprint had been perfected, and the industry was ready to take the experiment to a global scale. NWA was the definitive test phase for everything that was unleashed in the 1990s. While some critics argue that this is just music and it possesses no real power to harm, I disagree with that perspective. I strongly believe that hip-hop has functioned as a negative influence on the urban youth. When children grow up idolizing a culture that rewards criminality and violence, it becomes almost impossible for that culture not to exert a direct influence on their development. They watch these rappers receive the exact money and attention they desire for themselves. Think about the countless young people who have thrown away their futures trying to become what NWA was only pretending to be. These kids paid real-world consequences for a manufactured image, and we are seeing the extreme end of this cycle right now with Pooh Shiesty. Pooh Shiesty stands as one of the biggest gangster rappers in the industry today. But unlike the members of NWA, Pooh Shiesty appears to be fully immersed in that life. It is clear that he is the undeniable product of the gangster rap agenda. He represents exactly what happens when you grow up idolizing gangster rappers. After achieving stardom, he continued to live out the gangster narrative found in his music. His history includes a shooting incident at a club and a robbery in a parking lot. But the situation has recently escalated to a whole new level. Just weeks after his release from prison for those previous charges, Pooh Shiesty was arrested again in April 2026. This latest incident is truly unprecedented and confirms the dangerous trajectory of the industry. He is accused of allegedly using force to compel his own label boss, Gucci Mane, to release him from his record contract. This is insane because Gucci Mane himself is a notorious figure in the gangster rap world. Pooh Shiesty represents the ultimate manifestation of what this genre was designed to create. He is the final iteration of the gangster rap archetype, an individual who will likely influence an entire generation to crash out in the exact same way. When you look at the financial connections between the music industry and the biggest investment firms, you start to see a direct line from the music industry to the private prison industry. Many of the biggest investment firms are directly invested in both the music business and the private prison business. The timeline of the industry reveals a calculated corporate infiltration. The transition from novelty soul acts to the gangster rap social experiments of the 80s served as the opening act. Clive Davis later provided the massive funding to transform the experiment into a global standard, using the bad boy era to hijack the culture for a corporate agenda. Now, in 2026, we see the inevitable result of this design. The situation with Pooh Shiesty represents the final stage of an assembly line that rewards criminality and cultural destruction. The secret meeting gave the industry a license to trade the urban youth for dividends, ensuring the private prison system would flourish while the youth followed the script. But I want to know what you think. Do you believe the secret meeting actually happened, or is it just an urban legend? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, because to me, it's clear this industry has always been used to push certain agendas. In fact, the movie Josie and the Pussycats exposed just that, telling us how the music industry was hijacked to push this agenda. If you want to see a breakdown on the movie that completely exposed the music industry, watch this video right now. And if you want to support unfiltered content that isn't afraid to reveal the truth, make sure to like this video and subscribe to join the truth movement. I want to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.